Welcome to this week's episode of Forgiving the Girl Inside, a Matter of the Heart. I'm your hostess, Lisa Drennan, author of Forgiving the Girl Inside, Finding Balance, Freedom, Fun in Your Life, energetic mindset mentor, business strategist, certified aroma freedom practitioner, and so excited to be here for this week's episode. We are streaming live in Facebook on my page. And this is also going to be uploaded to my podcast site. You can listen to it on your favorite host, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you hear podcasts. And you can also watch it live on YouTube when it gets posted. So if you know anyone that will resonate with our beautiful guest today, Sabrina, who is going to be sharing her healing journey story, please share it. And we would love to hear your feedback. How did this story resonate with you? Please share in the comments. And if you'd like to if you'd like to hear the next episode, be sure to subscribe. I post a new story every Tuesday, sometimes Thursday, and every Friday at 7 a.m. I post Forgiving Friday. It's my own personal journey going through scripture about forgiving yours truly. I have found working with my Christian female entrepreneur clients that forgiveness keeps us stuck. And when we can truly forgive the little girl inside for all the past things that we've done, we can move forward and we can live out our purpose with passion. So today we have the beautiful Sabrina, who is going to be sharing her journey, her personal healing journey. She has an amazing story of what life was like before, and it has to do with this cycle of food. So before that, I just want to introduce you. She is a holistic health coach who helps women with a history of yo-yo dieting, totally know about that, heal their relationship with food and establish positive daily habits permanently, okay? To get rid of that yo-yo cycling so that your bodies have the energy that they need to achieve the health goals without ever having to go on one of those fad diets. And if you're like me, you know what it's like. One of the biggest areas we self-sabotage in is through our eating. I know that was I was stuck in unhealthy coping mechanisms for so long. And I know that it had to do with mindset. My heart wanted to be a healthy weight, wanted to prevent heart disease, but my mind was like, oh, I'm stressed out. Oh, I'm sad. I'm going to eat that hot fudge sundae. Instead of having like a half a scoop, I'd eat like a whole ice cream, like a whole half a gallon of ice cream, feeding my sorrow because I was holding on. So getting to the root cause is all about your healing journey, and it all begins with forgiveness. So Sabrina, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and your story. So tell us a little bit more about you and how you got started on this healing journey.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Lisa, for having me and letting me share my story and hopefully help other people heal as well, because I know that this is something that a lot of people, especially women, struggle with, and a lot of people do that silently. And to have that voice and to know that other people have gone through that as well, it can be very, very helpful, because I know that when I was going through it, I felt very, very lonely and like no one understood what I was going through. So yeah, as you mentioned, I'm a holistic health coach. And the reason why I came about doing this work and why I created my own business helping other people is because I went through that. So I was a synchronized swimmer at an elite level for 8 years of my life. And anyone who's not familiar with the sport, it is a very, very body image focused sport where you are taught at a very young age that you are more worthy if you are skinnier, and you make certain teams if you look a certain way. If you look at the Olympic teams, they all look the same. They're tall, they're skinny, they're lanky. And so I did this from 8 years old until 16. That's when your core beliefs about body image, about food are being formed. And so when I was in the sport, I was stuck in that bubble. So you don't really realize that the things you're being led to believe might not necessarily be super healthy and might have a lot of problematic tones to it. And so when I came out of the sport at the age of 16, it was like this bubble burst where I was no longer an athlete and my body was changing, because not only was I becoming an adult, but I was no longer training for 25 hours a week. And I no longer had the luxury of eating whatever I want just to fuel my body as an athlete. I had to navigate this whole new food world where you shouldn't eat carbs, or you shouldn't eat after 7 p.m., or you shouldn't eat breakfast. And I was so lost and confused. And so I didn't know, this is a complaint I hear from my clients all the time. I feel like I don't even know what to eat anymore. I feel like I don't even know what my body needs anymore. And so I did what most people do, what is like the societal norm, which is you go online and you ask people, like, what did you do? Like, what worked for you? And so I jumped from diet to diet, never being able to stay consistent. For me, it was Monday through Friday, super good, super restrictive, ate clean, very low calorie, very boring food. And then, of course, I would break on Friday night. I would binge for 2 days, and then I would start again on Monday. And that cycle repeated itself for years of my life.
And it's such a horrible cycle to be in. And emotionally, what did it do to your psyche? Like, how did it affect your social life and your, your ability to want to go out and hang out? Like, almost like, it sounds like it sucked away all your fun because you were so absorbed into this. Oh, I can't eat this. I can't that. Oh, it's going to make my body. And like, oh, I could just imagine the thoughts that went through your head.
Oh, yeah. I mean, every day, every activity I did revolved around food and how I looked and what I did and exercise. And it was really hard for me because it became part of my identity, because I would eat super healthy in front of other people. And so I was the healthy friend. I was the health nut who was always on a diet, or who didn't eat bread, or who worked out. And the more that you internalize that identity, the more you feel uncomfortable breaking it. And so it was such a cognitive dissonance, because I wanted to be that healthy friend. I thought people liked me because I was the healthy diet friend, which is, I mean, I look back on it and I'm like, I was so far from the truth. I was pretty annoying because picking a restaurant was, such a headache, because I needed to make sure there was food that I could eat. And I needed to make sure that I was working out every single day. But I wasn't any healthier. If anything, I was more unhealthy back then than I am now, because then I would binge when I was alone and I felt lonely. And I was on this constant pursuit of this body that would make me happy. Like, okay, once I hit this weight, or once I look this way, then I'm going to feel connected. I'm going to feel happy. I'm going to feel confident. And as anyone who's ever been on a diet knows, it's not about the way that you look. I have so many clients who look back on pictures when they were 20 years younger and maybe 100 pounds lighter because they hadn't started the diets yet. And they hated the way they looked back then. And so what I realized is I was constantly pursuing this happiness through my body. And I just felt more and more lonely doing that.
Yeah, and I can totally relate to that. I know when I was struggling with my weight and I look back at pictures, I was just like, oh, okay. I always have like a number in my mind, like, 110 pounds, I'm 5 feet tall. Like, that's healthy to me. That's where I feel the most comfortable. But then if I, gain weight, I'm like, oh no, I gained weight. What did I do? What did I eat? And then it gets in a cycle. And like, now I'm postmenopausal for 4 years. And I had a full hysterectomy in January, and my body completely changed. My hormones are completely gone, right? Well, they're not gone, but they're totally off whack. And then like I eat food and I gain weight. I'm like, I just looked at that and gained weight. And then my psyche gets into, well, if I'm going to gain weight, then I'm just going to eat whatever I want. And then I'm like going for the sugary desserts and I'm not enjoying it. And mindset is so important when you're consuming food, because like, what's your why? So what was the pivot point when you got to the root cause of why you had these thoughts? Like if we think about captivating our thoughts, you believe what you receive. So if you believe you're, oh, I'm going to put on this happy face and show everyone I eat healthy. I'm great. Look at how fantastic I look. You know, one of the thoughts that comes to mind is, oh, girls are going to be so envious because I look so great, you know, and I feel good. But in the inside, it's almost like, and you see that reflection in the mirror, and then you start criticizing yourself. We are our worst critics. So, what
Mhm.
was the pivot point that made you realize, you know what, there's something deeper than this cycle? And how did I get in this cycle and how do I get out of it? What's that root cause?
So during the many years that I was yo-yo dieting, I was able to kind of maintain a normal life. A lot of the secret eating happened when I was alone. And then when I got to university and I started getting a lot more pressure and, you know, I was more of an adult, I had more stress, I had more responsibility. I ended up, my coping mechanism was to control what I could, which was what I put into my mouth and how much I exercise. And so the yo-yo dieting turned into what they call orthorexia, which is like this unhealthy obsession with being healthy, where you are micromanaging every single thing you put into your mouth. I was counting every single calorie, and that was really when my life like went downhill, because then I stopped socializing. I stopped going to restaurants altogether. I would stay home on Friday nights, even though all my friends were going out, because I was like, I don't want to eat all the calories that are going to be at the restaurant. But then that would cause even more loneliness and sadness, that I ended up eating as many calories as I would have at the restaurant, but I did it at home in silence to feed those emotions that were caused by that. And then that cycle was just fueled and fueled, where I got to a point where I realized all of these things I think I'm doing in the name of health. Well, first of all, I'm losing friends because of it. Second of
Mhm.
all, I'm not any happier. I am more miserable, and I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to get myself out of it. And it's when I realized that, when I really was just like, I cannot keep living that way. And I kept booking appointments at our school therapist. And every time, like the day before, I would cancel because I was like, I'm fine. I can do this on my own. Like, I don't need help. Um, and then eventually I remember it was during Christmas break, and it's during Christmas break that like you feel all the emotions. Like, it could be really
Mhm.
joyful, like it could be really, really sad, because you're like, the year's ending, new year's starting, what do I have to show for it? And I remember being like, I cannot start a new year and repeat this and keep living this way. So I decided to book the summer and to go to Italy and to just like take myself out of my environment. Like, I really just needed a shock to my system, because I knew if I kept being around the same people, around the same environment, I would keep going through the same patterns. And so it was booking that trip and taking myself like physically out of that, and being exposed to a culture that was like night and day from our Western society, where in Italy they don't talk about diets, they don't talk about calories, they eat their bread and their pasta and their cheese, and they're one of the healthiest populations in the world. It's when I noticed that my entire paradigm around food and health was completely warped.
Wow, that was a great visual, that eye opener. And they
Mhm.
do, they eat a lot of fresh food, and you know, they don't add those preservatives and stuff that we do to their breads. They got
Mhm.
the best pasta and the best. I've never went to Italy, but I've had food imported from Italy. So my bucket list is to go there someday. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful experience. And such, I mean, to go off in that different environment, you knew you needed something, and to be able to have that opportunity is such a beautiful thing. And so when you got this knowledge and you realized it, was it like a sudden click, and then you decided to like just eat the pasta and the bread, or what changed for you?
It definitely was not an overnight, like, oh my God, I'm realizing everything. I remember the second I got off, I was very nervous about going. I was very nervous because I knew I was going to have to eat all of these foods I was afraid of. And I knew I was going to be uncomfortable. And I had a bunch of people, because I was the health nut. A bunch of people told me, like, aren't you afraid to go to Italy? You're going to have to eat the bread. And aren't you afraid to gain weight? And for me, I was like, in my head, I was like, yes, I'm terrified, but I'm still going to do it. And I remember I landed and I was living in a host family with like an Italian family. And the grandma looked at me, and the first thing she said is, "Oh my God, you are so skinny. Let me get you some food." And I was like, oh, this is going to be a challenging summer. But that's exactly why I went. I needed to challenge myself. And so eventually, anytime I felt nervous, like they would give me food and my body would like retract and cringe. I was like, you know what? This is exactly what I need. And so I progressively started eating the way they did. And the difference is, it's not, yes, of course, their food is fresher, but it's the culture around food where you eat slowly, you eat smaller portions, you eat connected with other people, you enjoy life. You're not always distracted or on the go, or their culture around food is just so different. It's celebrated. And it's when I started realizing that my experience around eating was so much more enjoyable. And I actually ended up losing weight unintentionally by eating those foods. And I was just overall healthier. It's like, it was throughout, I was there for 4 months. It was throughout that 4 months that I realized at the end of the summer, like, all of these fears and these beliefs I had around food because of the fear mongering that gets told by diet culture was just false. And it was definitely not an overnight kind of realization.
That is a great perspective. I love that. We do, as Americans, we rush through the meal. We have all these fast food restaurants, and I don't know how many families don't spend time eating dinner together and just enjoying the conversation. Like, they got their electronics on the table with them and all of those things. So to have that perspective, again, it goes back to your mindset and connecting. Like, your heart's telling you, your body's telling you, like, no, you need to enjoy food, you need to chew it, you need to enjoy the company that you're with, and the time to sit and eat. And that's such a great perspective, and really enjoy. And like you said, like, when you're eating, you're satisfying your food, you're satisfying your appetite, and you eat smaller portions. And I know, like, I had heard that about Italy, like when you get like the pastas are like really tiny, and like you go to an Italian American restaurant, you got so much pasta there. It's like, well, you don't have to eat all, but it's in front of you. And I grew up with the concept of, you need to clean your plate, you know. And I almost instilled that in I have 3 adult children now, but my oldest was like, nope, you got to clean your plate in order to get dessert. And it's like, thinking back that now, by the time my 3rd kid was, like, eat whatever you want, I don't care. You can still have dessert. And thankfully my kids don't have any issues with eating. They're very healthy. But my dog starts barking. No worries. But it is, you do develop this unhealthy thing. And I believe that the root cause has to do with, like, our childhood. Like you had said, you spent your core years doing all of these. I mean, that's a very strict schedule for a young person to follow. And, you don't realize the talent that our athletes have, with the dedication, the time, the commitment that they put in, and the restrictions that they have. It just doesn't realize. And it's like, why did you put yourself through all of that? Like, what was the driving force behind you to want to do all of that? And then when you stop doing it, and now you have to change your lifestyle, that's a hard habit to break. And I can imagine, because our beliefs are so strong and they're so instilled in us at such a young age. And then when you have to go through and rethink your thinking and get new beliefs, because what you were told may not have been the truth, and it doesn't work for you, and to develop this whole program. So tell us about your program and what you developed to help women go through all this change.
Yeah. So I love what you said before about, we were taught to clean our plates. And the biggest problem that I see with women who come to me is they don't know how to listen to their bodies anymore. Because when diet culture comes in, and for a lot of these women, it comes in at an early age. They saw their moms dieting, or they were just exposed to society, 15-year-old girls who are now like dieting or going on keto or calorie counting. And what that does is it completely tunes you out to your internal wisdom about what foods make you feel good, when you're full, when you're hungry, because diet culture tells you to rely on external factors. It tells you to rely on, well, even if you're hungry, you've already surpassed your 1,200 calories today, so you can't eat more. Or the Weight Watchers points that are telling you, well, you still have points left over. So even if you're not hungry anymore, well, you still got points left over. So make use of those points. Or it's after 7 p.m. You're still hungry, but intermittent fasting says that you can't eat after 7 p.m. And it's like we stop trusting our body. And it's so silly because we would never judge our body for needing to go pee or needing to sleep, because we're like, well, these are just functions of our body and our body is telling us what it needs. But when it comes to hunger, there's so much judgment around it. And there's so much judgment about cravings. And the thing is that your body and your brain and your stomach are always trying to communicate with you what it needs. And diet culture, it says, you know what, your body is not smart enough. Let me give you a meal plan that 8 million people follow, and this is going to work for you. And so what I do is I take my clients and I say, all of this external messaging that is harming your relationship with your body, that is causing you to distrust it, we need to tune it out. And we need to reconnect to something that is going to work for you specifically. Because what's going to work for me, how I eat, is not necessarily going to work for you. And I have some clients who don't enjoy eating breakfast. So maybe having their first meal at noon does make sense. But then I've got another client who's a nurse who was trying to do that, but she was at work from 6 a.m. until noon. And I asked her, how do you feel in the morning at work? Low energy, headaches, moody. And it's like, that's a very clear sign. Your body is trying to tell you something. It needs fuel. And the second she would have her first meal at noon, it wasn't like a salad or a nice little sandwich. It was the pasta and the pizza and any food that she could get into her body, because her body was in such a starvation mode that it was asking for anything. And so it really is about, let's stop with all of this external, all these rules and these restrictions, and let's reconnect to what your body needs specifically, so that you learn to make peace with food, so that you don't feel deprived and lonely and sad in this pursuit of weight loss, so that you find confidence in the body that you have now, that you find joy, you find happiness now. And then you won't have to turn to food for coping, and you can actually enjoy what you eat, and you can start implementing these healthy behaviors, these healthy habits, because you want to, not because you have to. And when you want to do it, that's when you can stay consistent. If you're forcing it and you're struggling every single day, of course you're going to struggle to stick to it.
That's really powerful. And that totally makes sense. And when you think about that, when you're told not to do something, you want to do it. And just to have that thought process, like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to eat this. And eating, like, when you listen to your body and it's telling you. And I can resonate with all those diet plans that you mentioned. I think I've tried every single one of them. And it's amazing, the unhealthy relationship that we have with food. So your program is amazing. I love that it's customized and tailored to each individual. So we'll be sharing the links in the description for those who would like to connect with Sabrina. If this is resonating with you, or you know somebody that this would resonate, if you're ready to have a healthy relationship with food and listen to your internal wisdom, your body, and eat in accordance to how you should eat, because like Sabrina said, we're all different. It's not one diet fits all. And what works with somebody. And I know when I deprive myself of something, I want it more. And I know when I have that balance and I can enjoy, healthy substitutes of my food. I love chocolate. I have to have chocolate every single day. It's in my
Yeah.
body. And if I don't give myself the healthy chocolate that I like, that I make these little candies, almond bark, I call it. And if I don't get that, I'm gonna go for that unhealthy, sugary, store-bought candy that's not so good for you, because that's what my body craves. So just giving in and
Mm-hmm.
knowing and listening and everything. And I was told when I first started my diet journey, well, everything in moderation. And I actually did a diet plan where I ate ice cream after my workout, and I just thought that was the best. It was like, yes, I can eat ice cream after my workout.
Yeah. And it's such a fun concept, right? Everything in
Mm,
moderation. It makes sense, right? Like it's super simple. But when you've been dieting your entire life, there's that internal mindset of, even if I'm telling myself I can have everything in moderation, there's that guilt, right? Like, I'm having this
mhm,
ice cream, but I shouldn't be having it. And there's still even if you're not officially dieting, there's such an internal debate going on. And we really need to like deconstruct and rewire your brain and reprogram everything you've been taught, so that there's no more of that internal dialogue that is sabotaging you.
mhm. Yeah, you're speaking my language. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I love that. So, in closing, what is one piece of advice you can give to somebody to help them start this journey to rewire their mindset when it comes to having a healthy relationship with food?
I would say is to evaluate. If you've dieted your entire life and you are constantly on the search for the next diet and the next diet, ask yourself, where has it gone you so far? When you look back at the first diet that you did, are you healthier? Are you smaller? Are you happier than when you first started? Or do you feel more out of control around food? Maybe you are even heavier than when you first started, because dieting is a predictor of weight gain. It's not a predictor of weight loss. There's actually no study that shows that dieting results in long-term weight loss. And so start questioning and just reflecting on that, because so many times we just go along with what everyone does because it's the societal norm, and we don't actually use critical thinking and facts and research to ask ourselves if what we're doing is actually right. And a lot of the times it can be really harmful on your own body. It will be very harmful on your own body. And if you have kids, it can really be harmful on the relationship with food that your kids are developing, because you will model the behaviors that your kids will learn. And that is formed very early on. So just starting to be critical and reflect on that. And then if once you do realize, and you will, that maybe this isn't the solution for you, get help. Definitely get help, get support, because it can be very, very hard to do this on your own. And it can be very, very easy to fall back into our old ways of thinking. Our brains like to think a certain way, to think it the same way it's always had. So to have to rewire that, it can be very, very difficult to do on your own. So definitely don't wait until your back is against the wall and you have no other option. Start now.
Yeah, and it's so important now to do it now, to do it in the moment, because what are you waiting for? You're just prolonging the unhealthy coping mechanisms that you're using. And that could lead to, there's so many health problems that it can lead to, heart disease, diabetes, high cholesterol, all these things that keep us sick and keep us stuck. So
Mm-hmm.
living in the now, changing that mindset is so important. So be sure to check the description, click on the links to connect with Sabrina and get on your healing journey, your health journey. And if you are looking for ways to be able to um, get right with your mindset, connect with me. I have an awesome program called SOAR. It has something to do with connecting your heart and your mind. So be sure to visit my website to learn more about that. And if you're wondering what kind of a servant heart leader you are, take the quiz. It's an amazing personality quiz, quick quiz to see where you're at if you're building your entrepreneur world. So thank you so much, Sabrina, for sharing your time, your space with us, and your beautiful healing journey, and helping us rethink food and getting ready to rewire our mindset. So many valuable tips that you shared. So I really appreciate you being here today.
It was my absolute pleasure.
And thank you everyone for joining. If you are here live, say hi. If you're watching replay, #replay, tell us what your biggest takeaway is and tell us what's your mindset about eating. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast, be sure to subscribe and give us a review. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day. And remember, we are all on a healing journey. It's a matter of the heart.